A Guide to Professional Networking for Developers with Wesley Faulkner.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I am going to go through my presentation, and what I have to do is the slides are on another screen, so I will not see your questions. But as you come up with questions, go ahead and type them into the chat, and I'll make sure to leave enough at the end to make sure that I'll cover all the Q&A. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me start sharing my screen. All right. So first of all, I am an employee of MongoDB, so that's why all the slides will have MongoDB branding. They encourage me and help me to do these types of presentations, so that's why I give a little spiel about how I'm a developer advocate for them, and I'm here to promote their brand. If you're interested in learning about MongoDB, which is a database that has web scale, you can talk to me later after the presentation. I'll have my contact information about MongoDB. But basically, they're awesome. They help me do this. Thank you. Let's go ahead and get started about this presentation specifically. So this is a guide to networking. A lot of us have to do it. None of us are really trained on how to do it. And there's two aspects to networking. There's how to be a really interesting person so that people want to engage with you. This is the other half of it, which is how to be interested. So how to engage with other people. If I can go through this really quickly, I'll try to give you a little preview of the second part. But let's focus on, this is the hardest of the two, which is how to be interested in others. So let's go and get started there. First, a little bit about myself. My name is Wesley Faulkner, as I said before. I am a minority, at least here in Austin, and my parents are immigrants, which means culturally, I might present as an American, and I am, but I was raised with multiple cultures and by two people who weren't Americans. So a lot of my value system may not be 100% aligned with people here. And we also did not grow up with a lot of money. We were pretty poor, as immigrants tend to be, depending on where they come from. And so it's very blue collar upbringing where I came from, and which is a little bit different in this knowledge-based economy that we currently live in, which also makes my experience a little bit different, or a lot bit different, depending on where I am. My parents weren't educated, at least not before they came. They got education once they got here, but growing up, I received a lot of practical information about how to make my way through the world, which is a little bit different than some people who have a lot of education and made networks beyond their immediate circle. So I don't have those connections of people who went to universities growing up where they could introduce me to a friend that could help me get a job, that type of built-in network from my parents. So I didn't inherit any of that stuff. So I didn't inherit a network or wealth. And the reason why I'm saying all of this stuff about myself is because there are things that, because of my experience, made relating to others difficult early on until I really focused on networking. So some people have a natural taught method of networking. Mine was more trial and error. And so I took particular focus on exactly what worked and what didn't. So that's how this presentation was created. So why network anyway? I think we all know in our heart that it's needed, but why? So we learn through different experiences. When we network with other people, we learn more about the world from their experience through their eyes. So it helps us understand a little bit better where we are from other people's experience. We might not know how to talk to people with, let's say, a disability, because we never had to before. But as you network and you meet people who have these different struggles or different advantages, it helps us to see the world as a more of a nuance rather than a monolithic view. Networking actually helps you help others. So it's not just for yourself. You might think, I network to get a job, which you can, or I network to get ahead, which you can. But networking allows you to meet people who aren't aware of each other and maybe make that connection. Or if you have friends and family who need some experience or some knowledge that you yourself can't give, through your networking history, you might be able to find someone that you can connect and help them move forward with their endeavor, their questions, or if they're in a tough spot, like they need a job, or they're looking to hire someone, networking can help you make those connections and help those two people at the same time. Next is your self-esteem. Like I said, we all get into those situations where we walk into a room and we have to figure out how to network. It can feel extremely awkward, extremely uncomfortable, unless you've done it enough where you have built the confidence that not only can you do it, but you can do it well. So doing these networking events and practicing the tips that I'll give you later will help you become a better networker, but it also makes you feel better because your self-esteem will not be wrapped around how do you do it. It's going to be more just doing it and doing it well. So why is networking hard? It's super uncomfortable. We don't know what we can say, what we can't say. We don't know who to talk to. And when you do find someone that you do want to talk to, what do you talk about? The truth is most people are bad at networking because these questions are just going through our head. And keep in mind that everyone also struggles with this depending on where they are in their journey. So you're not alone. It's uncomfortable because there's no rule set. There was something we're not taught. We usually see networking demonstrated on TV shows and movies, and it also amplifies what we see and how awkward it is between that interaction on the screen. So we don't really get modeled good behavior. And when we do find someone to talk to, what level are they? Are they an executive or they own a company and you're just an employee? How do you bridge that gap in understanding? Or let's say it's someone who is looking for a job and just out of college, and their experience isn't something that you relate to directly because you're a little bit further removed from that. Or it's someone who's not in the tech industry at all, and you're with a partner or a spouse and you're at one of their events. How do you network there? So a lot of that is why it's so hard for all of us to get through networking, because, how do we do it? And luckily after this presentation, you'll be in a position to answer that question. So I talked about how we're being modeled behavior, usually through media. And this is an outline of some of the things that I pulled out that we're being taught, all of us, through the examples of bad TV shows. One, that networking is transactional. So you get something from them, they get something from you, and that's how you build a relationship in networking. Next is dominance. So make sure you take control of the conversation. You make sure that you drive home that you are the person that is the alpha of that conversation. Something else we've been taught is about people want to talk about themselves. So people love talking about themselves, get them to do that. The other is a firm handshake, right? You grab onto someone, you make sure that you have a nice hard handshake to make sure that you are exuding power. And here's one that I see everywhere, and don't be embarrassed if you're this person, that you give out your card. Right when you meet someone, you pull out your business card, or even if you sit at a table, you start dealing them like playing cards to everyone sitting around. That is a practice that I see a lot of people do. And I this stuff on this list, we all do this because, once again, this has been model behavior. And the last thing here is show off your knowledge. And I know I skipped the ask them what they do, but I'll go to that specifically. So you show off your knowledge. You say you're the professor of something. You use a lot of industry terms just to show that you are knowledgeable about something. That is something that shows dominance. So that goes back to the number 2. And where you see that ask people what they do, that kind of fills back into make people talk about themselves. And the reason why I skipped this and I come back to it is because I want to focus on this. This is something that we all have done, probably. This is something that I wanted to highlight because what you do when you ask someone what they do, it's easy because they are their job. They do that most of the day. But what you're doing is you're making sure that that is basically the only thing they talk about. They talk about what they do for a living, and that is their value of what their expertise is. And that kind of puts them in a hole of only talking about that subject. Dominance also puts people in a position where they can't ask questions. Because if you're owning the conversation, if you're saying that you're the alpha of the conversation, you're basically having them follow you, and that's not really a way to have someone open up and talk about themselves, or to even question what you're saying in terms of authority. Because if you are the professor of X, Y, and Z, and you say this is the way things are, if someone doesn't know anything about it, they won't ask you about it because they're going to come off stupid. They're going to say, well, I don't know anything about it, so I'm just going to assume everything you say is right. Or let's say I do know a little bit about it, and I say, well, I don't think that's the case, or can you explain that? You're putting the person in a place where they feel like they have to actually challenge you in order to have a conversation. Basically, you're on the wrong foot from the start. So make sure you don't do any of these things on the list, but also don't beat yourself up if you do. It's one of those things that, like, if you buy a car and then you'll start seeing the car. Once you know that these exist, if you notice that you're doing them, just make a mental note and just move on and just try, because this is something you're going to have to practice. Here's some basics to really good engagement. So eye contact is a thing. So try to do it, but don't do it in a creepy way. So don't stare someone down. Make sure you just have regular, normal eye contact. Try to smile. And smiling is for you as well as for them. If you smile when you talk, then what you're saying comes off as friendly. And you're also signaling to the person that you are approachable. So try to smile when you talk. And people want to be wholly seen. And let me explain this a little bit more. And this goes back to asking someone what they do for a living. When people introduce themselves, they are opening themselves up to being judged. What people want to talk about is their real authentic self. So not just what they do for a living, but what they do for fun, or how they spend their time with their family or not spend time with their family, or if they're dealing with anxiety because there's so many people in the room, or they feel exhausted because they had a long day. If they love going to these conferences because they get to meet all these interesting people, those are the kind of conversations that you want to make sure that you are opening yourself up to, and allowing the person you're engaging with to express all of their parts. If they play drums in the weekends, if they do stand-up comedy, if they've switched careers, all of these things you want to make sure that people are able to do in your conversation. So make sure that you allow that, either by not pigeonholing the conversation, by focusing on something specific that they are, and saying, are they a husband, a wife, are they a parent or not? If you're not focusing on these roles and adding and identifying them to them, you allow them to be wholly seen. Next is not to interrupt. And some people might feel that this is cruel. People get nervous and they start to ramble, hoping that you'll interrupt them when you attach to something that resonates with them. If someone says, oh, I like to travel, but I also like to work, but I travel during my work and I like to go to monuments, but I love pets. So if there's zoos, I'll go to, and it might seem disjointed because they want you to say, oh, you travel for work? I travel for work too, and interrupt them. Or they don't want to be interrupted. And what they're doing is they are scrambling to give you information. Let them give you that information. Don't interrupt. Don't latch on to the one thing that you are interested in. Let them explain as much as they want and wait for a natural pause until they're completed, and then engage in conversation. Sometimes people just need to get it out, but also you want to make sure you're welcoming, that you want to let them share whatever they feel comfortable sharing, and then engaging on that content, not just the parts that you find immediately relatable. You want to go ahead and try to engage with all of them if you can. And while you're listening, don't focus on that next thing that you want to say. Like I said, sometimes you key off on the thing that you're interested in. Try to make sure that you stay present and in the moment and you listen to what they have to say. And this last part is very important, and it says stay away from the unaligned. An unaligned person is someone that you feel that their value system doesn't align with your value system. It could be simple as someone doesn't like technology, and for you, that is an absolute deal breaker. If it's not a deal breaker for you, then don't consider them unaligned. But some people are like, there's might be some deeply held belief, like you absolutely think Star Wars is amazing and you cannot see yourself having someone in your network who disagrees with that. That's one of your value system. If someone's a extreme liberal, or someone's an extreme like conservative, and those are something that you just can't find yourself being aligned with that person, that is when you can excuse yourself from being engaged with that person. So, and when I say excuse yourself, don't be rude, don't be mean, don't say, oh my gosh, that is just horrible. You can say, well, it was nice meeting you, and I'm gonna start meeting some other people. Or you could say, thank you for the conversation. I need to, I'm gonna start seeing who else I can chat with. I have some more tips on disengaging from the unaligned later on in the presentation, so pay attention to that. Next, I'm going to go actually give you some of these tips. So it can be hard to find someone to talk to when you get to an event, and it's hard to find a place where you feel comfortable. So I suggest that you arrive early for two reasons. If you arrive early, it's easy to find someone to chat with without having to go through a sea of people. It's going to be a lot different with only 3 or 4 people there than with 50 or 100 people. So when you arrive early, it's easy to engage with the small amount of people who are there. Also, it gives you time to scout the venue. So you can walk around, figure out if you are sensitive to, let's say, smells. You can stand away from where the food is being served or away from the bathroom. If it's a place that has an indoor and outdoor location, you might be more comfortable with fresh air, or if it's cold, you might be comfortable by a heat source indoors. You can find a place where you're going to be the most comfortable at a venue. If you're unable to arrive early and you have the opportunity to look the place up online, like either a map or even through some sort of pictures from Google Images, do that so that you can understand the type of space, if it's going to be confined, if it's going to be large. Explore the plans of the location beforehand. And you also want to stay out of the way of high traffic areas. You don't want to stand next to the door where people come in and out. You don't want to stand next to, if there is a patio, the path to and from there. If there's drinks, if there's food, if there's bathrooms, you don't want to stand in places where people are going to be traveling a lot, so you don't have to keep shifting and moving. So make sure you stay out of those areas, and it'll cut down interruptions where you're actually engaging in a conversation, but you also have to be cognizant that you're not in anyone's way. Before I mentioned about listening to a conversation, and you're letting them ramble or you're letting them talk, and you're listening to everything, and you're not focusing on what you're going to say next. So when you're doing that, you might get to a point where they stop talking and then you lose track of what you're going to talk about. So if you find that place of where you are kind of lost and you just want to make sure that you're still present and engaged in that conversation, you can do what I call focus on the journey. So everyone's path through life goes up, it goes down, it goes away, it comes close. In this part of the journey, your paths are actually crossed. There is something that brought this person to this location and something that brought you to this location. And what you can do is you can focus on that point in the journey that brought you both there at the same time. And you can also move that point to understand their part of the journey before and after that point in time. This will help you with engaging with people on their level. So you don't want to focus on, let's say, like I said before, what they do for a job, because what if they don't have a job? Or what if they're retired and they are living off a very successful career? Or what if they were just laid off? And that could be a sore subject. So if you can stay away from status like class, money, title, access to celebrities or locations or even education, and just focus on the journey, like what brought you here, or how are you enjoying the seminar, or how are you enjoying this refreshments, or are you going to be going to the next one next year, or did you fly in yesterday? There are several parts of the journey that you can talk to someone and they can explain how they got from where you are today or where they're going after. So that is something, no matter what class level, you can be able to engage someone on. And when you're new to a venue, if you're looking for someone to engage in, coming in early means you can find people who are there by themselves. Those are easy people to engage with because you can walk up to them and you can just start interacting. Everyone generally wants to interact, or else they really won't be in the space. Or if they don't want to interact, they will make themselves unavailable. Or once you engage with them, it'll be immediately apparent that they don't want to engage. But generally speaking, when you find someone by themselves, they're just waiting for someone to approach them. They want to have a conversation. They're just in a position where they don't know who to talk to. So finding people who are by themselves is an easy way to start having a conversation. If there's a group of people at a table, you can still engage with them. It's a little bit harder, but you walk up to the table, you can just see who is willing to engage by eye contact, because they'll look and see and notice that you're there, and you can engage with that person who is approachable. And I mentioned about staying away from the unaligned. So there's easy ways to leave a conversation that are nice. You can say, I'm sorry, I need to go to the bathroom, and you can leave the conversation. Or you can say, I want to get some food, or I need a refill of drinks. Saying that you need to do some of these things, or even if you want to network with other people, that is an acceptable excuse and an easy way to leave a conversation. If you're with a person who is aligned, but you still want to leave a conversation, there are ways of doing that too. by using either of the bathroom, food, or drink excuses, but you can also use them to help with your networking. So you can say, hey, have you talked to anyone else here? And if they say yes, you can have them introduce you to that person, which is a great way of transitioning to another person. If they have not talked to anyone else and they are aligned, then you can say, hey, let's meet some new people. And then you can bring that person with you by identifying someone and doing an introduction. Or if you have met someone, introducing them to each other is a really good way of leaving a conversation or transitioning into another one. And a really important part here is to make sure you follow up. So connect with them on LinkedIn, on email, Twitter, Facebook, text message, Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever is the most comfortable for you is the one that you want to engage on. So me personally, I am better at Twitter than I am at email. So I'd rather have someone, I'd rather engage with someone on Twitter. And the important part about the follow-up is that you have to take the onus on yourself to do the follow-up. So ask them for their card. Don't give them your card and say, hey, we should stay in touch. If Twitter is your best way of engaging with someone, to ask them for their Twitter handle instead of saying, here, follow me on Twitter. Following up is something that you want to take the lead here. You don't want to make sure that they do that. If they don't use Twitter, for instance, for me, a lot of people don't, ask them their mode of conversation of where they want to be followed up, LinkedIn or text message or email. So first, default to what's easiest for you. And second, if that is not an option, ask what's easier for them. But once again, it's still on you to follow up. So that's extremely important. And the last tip is don't overdo it. So find the one thing, but don't do everything. Don't follow them on Twitter. Don't connect them on LinkedIn, send them an email, then text them, and then follow them on all of these messages. It comes off stalkery and needy. So make sure find one of the mediums, unless it makes sense to actually move on to another one, but don't overdo it in the follow-up. All right, so what I covered is that it's okay to be uncomfortable. Everyone's uncomfortable. Not everyone learns how to do networking. Most people don't. So if you feel uncomfortable, realize that you're not alone. A lot of people in that room, it's going to be uncomfortable for them too. Be interested in what they have to say. So make sure that you are listening, you are engaging on what they're giving you, and don't cut them off. If you ever get to the point where you don't know what to say, focus on the journey. Figure out what brought them there, where they're going, what they've come from. These are very rich topics and will expose more subjects for you to listen and to engage on. Don't waste your time on the unaligned. The people who you feel aren't mirroring your value system, when you engage with those people, you're either doing it for one of two reasons. One, because you can get something out of them, or two, you're worried about their impression of you. If you're doing something just to get something out of them, then you're kind of just using them, and that is not a relationship you want to start off right. And two, you're worried about them seeing you in a place that is something negative to them. Like if they don't like technology, then you might have to hide that you love technology. And it goes back to being fully seen, and you not being fully seen is also a negative. So if you have to hide a part of yourself in order to engage with this person, that's not a good thing. So that's why it's better to cut the relationship at the beginning rather than have this person think that you two are a good connection. And then it comes out later, or you have to feel like you have to confess that you actually do this thing that they absolutely hate. So you don't want to start that off because that's just more of a burden on you to suppress yourself or to find a way to use someone. So don't do that. Next, follow up. You're making really good connections here. So make sure you follow up with the genuine people that you do connect with. And it doesn't have to, and it's especially, it doesn't have to be someone who you feel that you can get work from later or is going to be a good connection. Find someone that you actually like and you want to have a relationship with. All right. And so make sure you do the follow up, and it's on you. So don't put it on them. All right. That's the end of the presentation. It's really quick. I made sure to leave a lot of time for the Q&A. If you have questions afterwards, or if you're watching a recorded session, you can contact me via email, via Twitter, or via LinkedIn. Once again, I prefer Twitter, so go ahead and send me a message then. I'm going to go ahead and close the conversation and see what questions are in the chat. All right. All right. Let's see what questions we have here.
There was one question in the ask a question section. Let me see. It says, Henry would like to know, out of curiosity, you mentioned that your family is immigrants. If you don't mind sharing where they're from.
Oh, sure. My mom is from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and my dad is from Antigua, which is in the British Virgin Islands. So not only did they come from different parts of the world, my mother's native language was French and Creole. And so very different cultures and even different languages.
Yeah, definitely. My wife actually goes to Antigua quite often. Her university, they have a program to go help teachers and stuff like that in Antigua. So yeah, I've never been there, but I've heard it's beautiful.
Yep. I've never been there either. My dad actually left Antigua and was raised in Virgin Gorda for most of his life. And so I've been there. We have family in Virgin Gorda, but not, I don't think anyone's left in Antigua. So I do want to go though.
Great. Well, that was awesome. That was some really good advice. I know you brought up things like, even when I feel like at times in my career, personally, I've had times where I was good at this because I actually tried. And then other times when I've not been so good, like doing things like the follow-up, I think are super important. And I've inconsistently done that. But when I've done it, it's been super effective. Oh, and then Henry also has another question. It says, for those not heading to conferences, where would you recommend to go to work on networking? A meetup or something?
So meetups are great. What I would do is make sure you would start with a place where you do feel the most comfortable. So a subject matter where you are fully learned on, or do something, or if you're more adventurous, go to somewhere where you are just now learning. And networking will help there because you can find people who are usually welcoming and help you with your journey and point you to the right direction. One other thing is, if you're looking to start, you could do the last part first. Think back to the people that you do have a connection with and reconnect with your network. Follow up with the people who you've had connections with, but you just haven't talked to in years or months, and get in the habit of making that connection, because you genuinely do love these people or like these people. So make sure you keep up that relationship. And then they can also help you, especially if they're local, find out where they're going to go and then go to those locations. And then you can use the partnership thing that I told you about, where you can introduce each other to people you both know. And also it's going to be easier to network with someone else.
Yeah, and I would just, from my own experience, because I run meetups and stuff, and some of them are great networking opportunities because they actually are built into it. And then others are less, where it's more about just the presentation. So I find that meetups can be a mixed bag, but then there are, at least in every town that I've been in, there's usually a meetup that is specifically focused around just networking. It's really not a presentation thing.
Yeah.
We had them here, and when I lived in Boston as well, there's usually even if it's a tech meetup, but it's specifically it's not really a presentation thing. It's more go meet at a bar or coffee or whatever. I mean, there's different variations, and those are, you know, I think the nice thing about those is the whole intention is people go there expecting you to come talk to them. So it's a little bit easier to approach people because you know that's what they came here for, right?
Absolutely. And I noticed that we don't have a ton of questions. And so I mentioned that I do have a little part about how to be interesting. And so I can show that and share that with you right now. Since we have just a few minutes, I can go through it really quickly.
Okay, sure.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So I shared it, saved it for last. So here's the part 2. I'm going to go through these really quickly. So how to be interesting is to bring your whole self and be authentic and be vulnerable and be relatable. So don't be an expert in everything. Make sure you're extremely humble. Make sure you say that you aren't, that you're just learning, or you've been doing it and or something you're continuing on a journey. Don't say you're a professional X. Don't say that you are an expert in X. Make sure that you leave wriggle room. I think everyone's human, so you can't know everything about anything. So make sure you don't come off that way. Our natural tendency is to make sure that we prop ourselves up. So try to fight that if you can. Next is to deflect separation statements. So I mentioned that there was a lot of things about putting people in classes, education, all these things. And what you want to do is when someone says, so what do you do? Because you're going to be asked what you do. Respond back with something where I'm kind of in tech, or like, you know, very vague, or I do a lot of things, meaning that you're more than what your job. And then you can say, you can bring your hobbies into it. You can bring your interests. You can also bring your job. You can bring your family. You can bring all of that in your answer. So they might ask a question that might put you in a very specific spot. And the reflex is to answer that question. So you can fight that by deflecting that, by either giving vague statements or giving really verbose answers about a lot of things that you want to talk about. Next is don't make it about you. So if someone does ask you, so what do you do? Then you can say, I'm kind of in tech and stuff like that, but what brought you here? What is this your first time at this event? So you can get the answer, you can get the question, and then you can use your response to learn more about the person that you're engaging with. And next is to add to the conversation and redirect it back. So if you're talking about technology, make sure when you answer a question, yeah, I do love C++. That is my favorite language. Don't just answer the question. Reflect back saying, have you done programming for a while too? Or, you know, just use it as a way to not just answer the question, but make sure you're letting the person participate, and don't just go on and on and on and on about yourself. And be yourself and feel free to disagree. If you're talking to someone who says, oh, I absolutely hate Star Wars, and you love it, you can say, oh man, I think Star Wars is amazing. So don't censor yourself. Go ahead and bring that part of you that might, even if it does feel like it might cause conflict, don't feel like you can't talk about that, okay? The person might say, you know what, I actually do like it too. I overstated it too harshly, my mistake. And they might correct themselves, and you might move on to the next subject. And one is how to get into a cluster of people at a table. I mentioned that you can make eye contact with someone there, but if that doesn't work, what you can do is you can ask a simple question, like, can I put my drink here, or can I join you? They'll give a quick yes or no answer, and the tone of that yes or no answer could tell you whether or not is that a group of people that you can come into. If it comes off as harsh or terse, then you know you can move on to the next table, okay? And how to interrupt the conversation. There's someone you definitely need to meet, and you want to talk to them, but they're already engaging in something else. How do you interrupt that conversation? One is you can walk around, get eye contact, and then just make yourself known. That is a simple way of doing it. Next is when you want to talk to someone, apologize to the person that they're speaking to, saying, I'm sorry to interrupt, I'm sorry, I just need it quickly, and then ask your question and interrupt that conversation, but make it so that they can, it's a quick yes or no answer, just like when you're coming into a cluster of people at a table. So like if it's like super important, like they're talking about something emotional, that they can quickly say, I really don't have time right now, or yes. If that response is terse or short, then you can not interrupt that conversation. So those are my quick tips. I have a whole nother presentation about that. Maybe I'll give one day.
Thanks for watching.